Welcome back. Hey, who knew we had to pull up Wikipedia to figure out what infrastructure is? Hey, Lisa gives us something to talk about this week. Hey, I like the idea of a big infrastructure bill. Hey, trying to fund things that are way too complicated for, very short-term appropriation funding, or too complex, or cross, somebody's borders, or some multi-agency thing. I think it's a great idea. The Secretary mentioned those same kind of things, but the big argument now is, out of $2.3 trillion, what exactly is infrastructure? Lots of counterpoint here. Going to go on over the next several months probably, and it does get a little squirrely when you see things like $400 billion for in-home and community-based health care, $100 billion for school and child care facilities. The Republicans have put an offer back at about $658 billion, where they left those things out. What bothers me is, those, what I would say are probably not quite infrastructure, although probably necessary to get that infrastructure done, dwarfs the amount that's allocated to airports and aviation in general, and things like radars. I mean, it makes the original sensor program look like pocket change. I mean, why don't we just do that? I mean, lots of things. So in the briefing sheets, aviation may be highlighted, but in the dollars, maybe not so much. Hey, no matter what, it's going to get complicated in the reconciliation process, which means it has to have something to do with either the income or the spend by the federal government. And that creates an atmosphere of debate. So why do we care? Hey, it's the only thing that's being discussed right now. There's no appropriations language. There's no, what's a line item for ERAM going to be? None of that stuff's going to get talked about. This is the only game in town. So if we want to get down to that level of detail, got to start at $2.3 billion. Hopefully get that driven through and drive it back into what the agencies are going to need. That's our job for the next few months. It seems like in every sci-fi movie, space travelers go to a planet, they pick up some used space stuff, and they go fly it from, another interstellar travel. Well, hey, Elon Musk has done it again. Recycling the SpaceX Crew Dragon. That was the same one that flew almost a year ago. And it launched again, and it's docked with the International Space Station. Pretty awesome stuff. Taking used equipment and redoing it. Hey, it's the key for affordable space travel. There wasn't so much fanfare around this one. It got delayed by a couple days, but the one in May of last year, maybe it's because we were right at the height of COVID that we were all glued to the YouTube and to the streaming from SpaceX, but not so much this time, and a little bit disappointing because it's still super cool. And we're already getting used to space travel. So I don't want to get used to it. I want it to stay exciting. And this kind of launch cycle means that what's the impact to the NASA? Well, there's supposed to be over 50 launches and re-entries this year. That's a lot, like one every week. And if that's the case, how does the FAA handle these massive amounts of airspace that are blocked? Hey, there's a Space Data Integrator 2 version coming, but I don't think anybody knows what it is. Super important stuff, because this stuff is coming, and it looks like reusables and recyclables are going to just make that more commonplace, and it's going to be a daily occurrence, but it shouldn't be normal, at least not yet. Hey, you should take back to the air, but only domestically. So, hey, travel's coming back. Last week, over 1.5 million passengers on 3 separate days. That's a big uptick. It's kind of what I've been using as benchmarks. First, it was 1 million. Now it's 1.5, and that's a pretty big hit. And I think April looks like it's going to end even stronger. But just as we're going back to the airports and getting ready to travel, then the CDC puts out, hey, through the State Department, do not travel to like 80% of the countries on the planet. Canada, Mexico, even the UK are on the do not travel list. So if you want to get that British feel, you have to go to BVI, which is reconsider travel. That's the term, reconsider travel. So some potential opportunities, but it looks like you can fly domestically pretty much all you want. And, so things are loosening up. Think people are traveling, just don't leave the country. Hey, Senator Bill Nelson received a very cordial reception from his colleagues in the Senate at his confirmation for the NASA administrator last week. His hearing did help give some of the insights of what we're thinking NASA's going to be doing under the Biden administration. First of all, they stuck to the plans of the former administration on when we were going to get back to the moon, which is 2024. And former Senator Nelson did hedge that timeline a little bit, saying space is hard. We'll kind of get to that. Because there's a lot of things that are hard. Space, we walked on the moon in 1969. We've been going back and forth to the space station for a while. We have space planes. We've even had Red Bull sponsor someone to jump from a balloon at over 100,000 feet with a parachute. Space might be hard, but I think we of all countries probably have this kind of stuff down. I hope we can get back to the moon. We're flying drones on Mars. Anyway, more of direct interest is that he did include a push for $2.3 billion for the Earth Science portfolio for NASA. Obviously linked to climate change. That's the requirement. Got to be linked. That's a big number for that. But that's what NASA does, and they do it well. So that kind of a study and analysis will help feed, what the future looks like for what climate change mitigation should look like. You have to be linked to climate change. Draw those connections now, or you're not in the budget. Hey, and speaking of NASA and Mars, still exciting stuff with Ingenuity flying around the surface, and we're setting speed trials here. Speed records on another planet. 4.5 miles an hour and a distance record of 100 yards. I mean, this is really cool stuff. May sound like just a jog and some small numbers, but hey, we are on another planet and those are the records being set. So those are the numbers. Now somebody has to get up there and try to beat those numbers. Although former Senator Nelson thinks space is hard, what I really think is super hard is autonomy. Lots of big bets are being made on autonomy for drones and urban air mobility vehicles. And there's another trend that's happening because autonomy is so hard, and that is keeping the pilot. Now, EHang, which is one of the leaders in advanced air mobility, at its earnings call last week, identified the launch of a larger AAM vehicle, which will carry more passengers, which is actually mostly passenger-centric. And it will have a wing, which is another trend, but they also committed to pursuing certification with their EH-126 was intended to be autonomous to keep a pilot. That's because they don't have a timeline for an autonomous certification, so it's a lot easier to have a timeline with a piloted certification. So that's the plan. Anyway, so they should receive a special airworthiness certificate next month, and that is incredibly meaningful. Autonomy is a very long process. There's a lot to figure out, but keeping a pilot shortens that path and makes these things much more viable and maybe much more marketable and maybe much more near term than scientific pipe dreams. So in wings are also another implication. Wings conserve energy. They glide, maybe make things safer. All very cool, but they also need a runway potentially, or could use a runway, which means implications on the NAS that although we kind of think of these things of being able to come and go up straight up, go vertical up and down, and be able to land and take off that way, if they require the use of wing to be able to conserve energy, that means runways that are already pretty well congested. Whole big implications on a whole different kind of infrastructure if you have a wing versus not. Think about it. And speaking of advanced air mobility vehicles, another trend is always buying these things before they actually either fly or mostly photoshopped, and UPS has done the exact same thing. They are betting the farm on Beta technologies. Beta is flying a prototype. They are flying, and they have an electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle, and they sold 10 to 150 to UPS for cargo deliveries. And their goal is to get to 250 miles. That's quite a distance, and up to 1,400 pounds of cargo. That's pretty significant. And so we'll see. They also have a pilot. Don't necessarily have to have a pilot, but interesting way that things are going forward is that people are buying a lot of or at least signing up for a lot of these things. I'd love to see a contract on one, see what kind of the exit clause looks like. I grew up with very much traditional airplanes. Even the names are the same. King Air, which is the original SUV of the skies. And now someone is looking to displace the King Air. How dare they challenge my what I grew up with? Well, anyway, Bye Aerospace, BYE Aerospace, plans to enter the business aviation market with something called the E-Flyer 800, an all-electric airplane using Safran electric motors, which they're built in France, and they'll be able to carry 7 passengers and 2 crew at 320 knots. That is the same set of numbers specifications for a King Air 260, which is the workhorse of the turboprop community. Range, okay, they got it on range. Only be able to fly 1/3 the distance, but that's just a function of battery power and storage, which will improve. But these are the first people that have targeted a very specific airplane as their replacement. We can take a look at advanced air mobility vehicles and say, hey, they look and operate a lot like helicopters, at least not heavy lift helicopters, but more commuter kind of helicopters. And when that takes place, they would be an easy target to be able to displace. But no one's taken on these kinds of turboprops. This is a first. It'll be interesting to watch. Hey, Earth Day was part of last week, and Deputy Administrator Brad Mims spoke to AIA's Civil Aviation Committee on Earth Day. What's really super interesting about that is Brad gave some of his history. And why he has a passion around Earth Day. He was a brand new staffer on the Hill working for none other than Senator Gaylord Nelson, who is the original U.S. proponent for Earth Day. And Brad recalled the activities at D.C. Back during the first Earth Day in 1970, which still holds the record of the single largest protest day in history with over 20 million people. That background set the stage for his keynote, which identified the focus of the aviation on sustainable and renewable fuels, and the challenges set forth with those, which is the main fuel is getting enough fuel to actually power a majority of the airplanes, which is kind of an interesting prospect. And he also discussed the need for new aviation professionals, not only for gender and ethnicity, but also the diversity of opinion. And he held that as the key to maintaining a safe aviation system going into the future. Really good words from Deputy Administrator Mims, and look forward to hearing more. Hey, have a great week. We'll talk to you next time.